In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the tool du jour at the moment, ChatGPT 3 to be precise, and talking about specifically whether using it for your business is cheating, basically. Are you cutting corners? Are you being bad using AI to help you in your business? And there's some interesting things that we're going to bring to the table today about case studies that have come out the woodwork, popped up already in the past 6 weeks, 7 weeks, however long it's been since ChatGPT hit the internet, and discuss the pros and cons essentially, right?
Yeah, and if you're getting bored of seeing ChatGPT on your timeline, we can assure you that we're not going in a deep dive. Look at all these questions you can ask. Like, we will talk about how you can use it, but we've done some deep research here on broader AI and, like you said, the utilization. And I think what you just said is like super important, because we started this podcast to help people get their business from 100K to 7 figures. So if you're in that camp, we're really trying to help you. And the challenges you're facing when you're at that stage is, okay, well, how do I outsource to a person? Where do I find this person? How do I train that person up? How do I make sure that their quality is any good? How do I make sure they do it in time? And then, of course, you've got to worry about the cash flow. And potentially AI is going to solve a lot of those problems for you, because well, the quality is pretty good as a baseline compared to what you could outsource. The barrier to entry, the cost bit, well, it's free. And the adoption is unreal. This isn't like a, wow, look at, this fantastic, I got it to write me a sonnet, although that is amazing, where I think we're going to do some hard hitting, okay, cool shiny object syndrome over, which it still is. I mean, it took 5 days to get to 1 million users, and it took Facebook 12 months? I can't remember, but it's broken all the records. Yeah, okay, still a shiny object. We want to get a bit more tactical, practical, and also we've got some proper juicy bits of research that we can share with you that's substantiated by governments, not just Vicky and I doing, our little podcast show.
Our little podcast show does have 120 subscribers on YouTube and hundreds of listens auditory. So yeah, if people want to share this with their friends and like and subscribe, by the way, that would really help us. Our little podcast.
Yeah, sorry, just off on a tangent. Have you heard the My First Million boys doing their gentleman's agreement? Probably a bit of an outdated term now, but the point still stands.
Yeah, it's, if you like listening to free content, essentially, then make sure that you like and subscribe to the free content that you're listening to, and maybe share it and tell people what you heard about it as well.
Yeah, basically that's the deal. If we have legit put in hours of work and effort into putting this show together this week, and we're going to spend an hour or two now talking about it. So if you're listening and enjoy it, it would really genuinely help us if you liked, subscribed, commented, interacted with us a little bit. Anyway, ask over. Let's give you some good stuff. What have you got, Vicky?
I had my friend over the other night. She's an ex-teacher. She now works at Sussex Uni. And just chit-chatting with her, she works in the kind of tech support department. And I was asking her what the impact of ChatGPT has been on campus. And she said the kind of general consensus is it is block and ban where possible. And that's something that I've seen, and we've seen kind of popping up across news articles, specifically in relation to ChatGPT since it launched. You can go into that tool and ask it to write an essay about how Shakespeare went to London. You can go and ask it to write an essay about how the Great Fire of London started. My first year dissertation essay at university was about the use of light in David Lean films. Right? You can go into ChatGPT and ask it to do the same, right? And give it a character limit and ask it to reference things and use certain words and things like that. And that's a problem for exam boards, for universities, for schools, and just kind of mirroring what my friend was saying was going on at kind of the uni she works at. The New York School District, the entire kind of district area has banned and blocked access to ChatGPT across its network as well. And that's just being copied again and again throughout the world. There's definitely a bury your head in the sand, block and ban approach to ChatGPT. And this obviously I think concerns business owners who are thinking, well, if I do get ChatGPT to write my blog post content, to write contracts, to write my speech for an awards acceptance speech, an email to a colleague, is that cheating? Is there a problem with that? I just kind of want to talk about like that initial knee-jerk reaction, I think, that universities and schools have had to ChatGPT, because friend who was chatting to, she said I could talk about this as well, which is very kind of her. She's been on both sides of the fence, right? She's been a teacher. She's had that exposure to kind of, the kind of exam board world. And now she's, at university, which one would think would be a little bit more high tech. And the students are telling them at the university they're using ChatGPT. And there's nothing the university can do about it, because they've set their processes up to mark student work in exams that students take online. So a lot of them don't go to halls and sit in a room full of hundreds of people like I did when I went to university, right? They rock up to a laptop at a certain date and time, log in and do their exam. There's nothing stopping them utilizing Google anyway. But now they have another tool which can define and write the words for them. And all they need to do is kind of like a copy and paste job. That's not the fault of the student, right? That's not the fault of the student. And if it takes a university and kind of school boards to reassess how they understand the information in a student's head, rather than banning this tool, I think that's going to be a better approach. Because by banning it, you're going to create the Streisand effect. You know the Streisand effect, Sam?
No, go on, educate me.
Do you not know this? Okay, so Barbara Streisand, singer/actress, sued a newspaper or the tabloids or whatever over in the States, or paparazzi, who had sold a picture of her beachside property, and you could see where it was on the coastline and everything. It's like one of those sort of helicopter shots. And the act of talking about it and saying, I don't want that being shared, made everyone go and look even more. So it's called like the Streisand effect. So the more you talk about something that you want to ban, the more likely it is that people want to go and see what the banned thing is.
Got you. Okay.
Which is how I think Andrew Tate has got popular, by the way, but that's a conversation for another time.
Oh yeah, let's not open that kind of worms.
Yeah.
I want to break this down, if I may. I want to dissect what you just said. So the first thing I just want to touch on, and I don't think we should spend too much time on, is like, this is a psychological, sociological problem. We have these big organizations that are run by rules and regulations, and they're very slow to accept change and take on change because the cost of making the wrong decision is really high. Whereas if you're just you and I, and we make, the wrong decision on a day, well, maybe it costs us a day. Whereas a big organization, they accept all students can now use this supercomputer, let's call it what it is, a supercomputer, against a marking and an examiner who, with all their experience and due respect, are not a supercomputer. It's just an unfair battle. So it's kind of like, you've got a child. Can I eat this? I don't know where you found it. No, my instinct reaction is no, don't eat that, whatever you've just picked up and found. Maybe it's just some cereal out of their bowl. Might be absolutely fine. But you default to no because it's safer. And I think that's part of the problem. However, these big organizations are without government guidance yet. But it is coming. The cavalry is coming. So I then want to move to, well, you were saying, well, their instinct is to ban. So presumably they're going, well, this could all be really bad. It could, they're worried about the negative consequences and there's a lack of understanding. So I just want to unpick and explain very, very specifically what this technology is. There is a whole load of data that goes in, and that data is most of the internet, a lot of literature, journals, a lot of books, lots of research, content that is already out there, that has already been served up by Google, that is already publicly available for the most part. It's run through a set of proprietary algorithms and models. So this is, if you like, where the artificial intelligence comes in. It's a set of mathematical equations that picked through this data to then give you an output. That's how it's modeled. Now, when you look at the Intellectual Property Office, so this is the UK government's place that deals with how do we deal with intellectual property and who owns it, because this is one of the big challenges is, well, who owns the output? Because, it's plagiarizing stuff. Well, no, it can take inspiration from stuff like any human can. Because I saw someone put this out the other day as a piece of Facebook content. They were fishing and they hooked me. They put it out there and they went, can we just call ChatGPT or this AI copywriting what it is, plagiarism. And I was like, whoa, no, you're wrong. It's not.
I mean, it's a question of semantics, isn't it? Like, because, and how people understand words and things like that.
I don't. You got to let me get this out. No, it is absolutely not, because a lawyer has to deal with this and has to make a ruling in court. This is the way it gets decided. It can't be grey. It can't be a feeling. It can't be a spectrum. It's either right or it's wrong. And the law says that this is not copyright. It's not intellectual property theft. The law says that, and they've got it here. I've got it up.
Yeah. Give it.
So just so everyone knows, my bedtime reading has been the UK government's AI strategy, and the defence's strategy for AI, and the intellectual property's strategy for AI, the NHS's strategy for AI. I've been going deep on this stuff to say, well, where are we putting all our money? Because Britain has declared that it is going to be a global superpower for artificial intelligence. So this is what I've got here. Point 8, and I could find you the reference. It's on the government website. Point 8, there is no single agreed upon definition of artificial intelligence. The government has defined AI as. So this is the government, and whether you like the government, dislike the government, they're in charge, and we voted them in. So their definition stands. That's democracy. That's how this works. Technology with the ability to perform tasks that would otherwise require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and language translation. And then point 9, they've got a really neat little diagram that explains it very simply. In the absence of a university-accepted definition of AI, so this universities, you've got to kowtow to these guys, like they know what they're doing. It may be helpful to think about AI inventions in terms of the simplified conceptual model illustrated below, which is what I said. Data in, which is open source, very important, that bit.
Available across the whole internet. It's already out there. So what we've got here is a tool making sense of it, which is what me or you would be doing.
Exactly. And then
with our flesh bag AI brains.
What's really, really interesting is in 2009, 2011, around that time, we were looking at artificial intelligence for some projects. And people were saying, well, no, legally, and it was the legal sense at that time, the algorithm owns the output, because it's its own thing, it's artificial. And I was like, well, that's really interesting, because what happens when this becomes, let's just advance maybe 10 years.
But an algorithm isn't a legal entity. It's not a person, is it? Or like a company.
So what's a person? You then start dissecting this. Well, if it has feelings, which they will do at some point, don't yet. If you have something, when does something become sentient? You start getting into real detail, which I don't have experience in. Anyway, where we are at the moment is that there have been legal court cases, and I should reference them, but I'm sorry, I've got so many notes on this, I can't find them, where people have tried to register IP owned by this algorithm, owned by this entity, and they've been rejected. It's not gone through. They are now going through appeal. So as we stand, you own the output. And this is government advice, not our advice. You read this online. And it's not plagiarism, and it may be inspired by, and it may look like other stuff, and you may have trademark issues because you are lookalikes and that type of thing. So this is just to say, this is all new. It's a lot of change. Default for change when everyone's busy is to reject it. But the government's coming, and we'll get into this in a bit, but the government has plans which they are executing, which they outlined in 2022. And these aren't like normal government announcements like, oh, we have an aspiration to do something. It's like, no, in the next 90 days, this is what we're going to do. And that's the first 90 days, which we're already 13 days in of 2023. In the next 6 months, this is what we're going to do. And they've broken it down by sector: education, healthcare, defense. These I don't think are empty promises, because there's funding behind it, and you go and check all the organizations and they're mobilizing because of what we said at the beginning. If you're a small business and you're trying to go from £100,000 to 7 figures, and you need to save time, you need to improve quality, you need to do things faster, cheaper, quicker, all that good stuff, AI can help you do that. The government sees that and they're going for it. Anyway, off my soapbox, Vicky.
Okay, all right. So step back a bit then. So if that is the case, right, and your second year English literature student is going to go and get help writing an essay about the body of work from Irving Welsh or whatever, right? Technically, in the eyes of the law, based on what you were saying and maybe where, the guidelines are going to go, is that isn't plagiarism, but it's a problem for universities or schools trying to do marking to assess the knowledge of the student, because all the student has shown here is that they are an operator. They can go away and ask the supercomputer, the right questions for the output. And so potentially, even though you might have a smart cookie there who knows the questions to ask, you can't understand whether they know the thing that they know. And so I put it to my friend and said, well, maybe we move away from that sit down at a desk, being looked at as you write your words kind of environment to assess your knowledge. And we go back to the kind of sit down and you get interviewed and you actually have to come up with that information and that instant response about that particular topic on the spot. And she said to me, that used to be what they did. That used to be what happened at university. It's totally new to me, right? Fellows would assess other fellows, and in time, fellowesses as well, on their knowledge, and then deem that they knew as much as they did about that particular topic. And then, you would be given a degree, right? Whereas kind of in the 50s, 60s onwards, exams came in because more people wanted to do degrees. Right. And it was a more kind of bigger scale way of being able to assess people's knowledge en masse. But even though it's only 50, 60, 70 years old, it's still outdated as a way of measuring knowledge. And we might need to kind of go back to that way, whether it's someone sits down at a computer and rather than typing now, they're asked questions and they can talk. But then, a clever operator would go and use a kind of AI chat to voice generating tool that you can find to mimic your voice and kind of do all of those things. So, I think it's a problem that they need to address about the upcoming 10, 20 years, and by banning tools like this, they're sort of pretending that isn't going to happen.
Not moving with it. Well, they're going to go out of business because there's a strategy and funding there for organisations to be better at this. If you say, no, do you know what? I'm happy with my horse and cart, thank you. This combustion engine stuff, these motor cars, a bit advanced for us, we're not getting involved. Well, you know what happened there. That's what's going to happen. So I think we need to look at parallels. We've got essentially, I don't want to villainize it, but we've got the lock, the key maker, and they've got a skeleton key, and they can suddenly open every lock. And now it's like, oh, well, we need to update our locks. Now, defence are way, way, way ahead of this. If you look at the MOD's policy, so this is, if anyone wants to go read this, there's a policy paper, Defence Artificial Intelligence Strategy, published 15th of June 2020. And it's awesome because there's some bitter people in defence. They go, the first line, the foreword from the Secretary of State for Defence, right? So serious person. A year ago, we published the integrated review committing to the strengthened security and defence and modernisation of our armed forces. We warned then that these steps were necessary response to the deteriorating global security environment, including state-based threats. Since then, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine has brought about the horrors of the industrial age warfare back to the heart of Europe. And they go on to talk about that. And if you read a bit further in there, they basically say, right, well, someone's got this clever skeleton key and they can open all our locks. And their strategy is, well, why don't we just put this clever artificial intelligence in our locks? And I think makes complete sense. Rather than a sort of a binary thing like they had to do with maths when the calculator came around. Well, go do a maths paper without a calculator and we'll check you haven't got calculators going in. Okay, you can do this one with a calculator. Rather than doing that, we said very early on, I think it was like episode 1 or 2, when you are tracking people and tracking how good they are or aren't, track their outcomes. Don't track how they did it, just track the outcomes because that's all you're bothered about. And if we move to that model and say, well, I'm just going to have my lock here, my artificial intelligence lock, and I'm going to measure how good your outcome is based on this. I don't need to know that by default you got the outcome. So I don't care what tools you use to get there. And the question is, what are we testing for? Exams currently test for outcomes, and they infer that the process you went through to get that outcome was within some reasonable means that they deem necessary. The question is now, well, okay, if some people got tools that others haven't, has this person done it with this supercomputer or not? Well, no, it's two separate tests. Test how people do it. So create a test for how you use ChatGPT to do your history exam, if you're bothered about the process. Or just test the outcomes. And which are we concerned about? Because as an employer, as someone running a business, you're telling me that this thing that I employ 12 people for that takes me 12 weeks, you can do as one person in a day. Okay, and you know how to do that? And you're telling me the tools are free? All right, well, I'm going to risk that because it's just asymmetric upside. Maybe the tools go down every now and then, but you've got 12 times 12 people's worth of effort to make it happen. So when you read through like these strategies that are online, That's how they're thinking. And you start, well, we can break down and talk about it more, but that would be my answer.
Yeah.
I think we want to talk about how you implement that.
I think we're in agreement, right? That you can't hold back what is a kind of a freight train here, essentially. And if in academia, they're really worried about it, we've got a little bit more freedom, I think, to adopt this tool and really go for it in the business world, right? But the questions of plagiarism and truth and authenticity definitely are kind of still coming up. In particular, there's a case study about the lawyer app, right? Do not pay.
Mm-hmm.
You heard about this?
We exchanged some notes. Go on. You tell the story.
I think you mentioned it actually last week, right? But I'll reiterate it. They are going to put like an ear pod in someone's ear and let them go and defend their own case for their kind of traffic violation trial in America. We don't know where, but they're going to fund the cost of the fees if it doesn't work. And essentially, AI is going to tell the person what to say, essentially. Their founder, Joshua Browder, says that we will have a situation where my AI will talk to your AI scenario, which I think feels right in terms of where the world is going. And it's going to be a matter of, are you a good operator? Are you good setting this tool up so someone can use it? Not necessarily, are you doing all the work?
It's going to come down to the data. You're going to have all the inputs. If you haven't got the evidence, if you haven't got the inputs for it, the AIs can only work with that. Data is going to become so much more valuable.
Like totally. So what the app does at the moment is enable consumers to fire back by getting resolutions to problems like getting refunds for tickets and kind of things like that. Essentially, like what they're doing is like investing a resource into trying this out. And if it works, then they're kind of go global with it. The law industry, the law sector is like many other sectors, like a lot of healthcare, a lot of contract negotiation, insurance, architecture.
All the regulated industries.
Regulated industries where there is a very clear by the book way of doing something. All of that can be fed into generative AI that can output the right answer at the right time. That's not going to be needed to be done by a person anymore. In the same way that we don't need a secretary pool to type up the notes from the day for a big business anymore, right? And that's just the kind of next step. Now, I'm putting this to you, Sam Jacks, is that cheating? By not having an actual person giving that information to that defendant in court?
Absolutely not. And here's why. Because we look at these guys, like they are gone, okay, well, we're scientists, we're data scientists, we're software engineers. We understand how this thing works. As in, for instance, Do Not Pay, this illegal company, essentially the lawyers. And they're going, okay, well, what's the bar, literally? And like, what's the standard in the States that to be a lawyer, you've got to pass the bar? What's the standard? What have we got to meet? And they're going, okay, we're passing that. And they are. They're meeting the human standard. And it's really interesting because it's like, well, we actually have higher standards for things that aren't human for these computers. They've got to be almost perfect. Almost perfect. And you see it now. People are going, created by, this computer. It's a bot. And you go, well, you've had some really bad experience as bots have evolved. We've all been on whatever website it is, and a chatbot's come along and, hello, person, how can I help you? We've all had that.
Hi, first name here.
Yeah, in their mind, that's where everyone's at. So I think we get down to the implementation. These guys have qualified it and got it to pass the bar. Okay, they haven't managed to get through all the regulatory hurdles, like they haven't got over all of them, but it is capable and it is there or thereabouts. And you look at the speed of evolution, we haven't yet got a Moore's law, the doubling of computing power every year. We haven't got the equivalent for AI yet, but it's quicker. It's going to be there much faster. It will get there. And it's the same in healthcare. It's the same in all these other professions. So I think I'm going to give like a business example here and explain how this should be implemented. So we joked back and forth saying, maybe this episode could be called How Ryan Reynolds Replaced His Whole Marketing Team with AI, because we shared that video and maybe we can clip it up and put it in the episode here, where Ryan Reynolds, and he's got a very specific character, a very specific way of talking, uses an expletive, tells a joke, like you can break down the way he is. He's awesome, like big fan over here. And he asks ChatGPT to create a commercial for him for his mobile network or whatever it is. And it does it. It nails it. Absolutely nails it. And he's going, whoa. Now, really important is how that gets implemented. I found another tool, which now on Zapier, if anyone's not used Zapier, it's a no-code tool for automation. So basically, people are now getting their clever chat bot, let's call it that. It's clever, this clever artificial intelligence thing. They're connecting it with Zapier, which is no code. They're going, okay, let's plug that into Twitter. So if I see a tweet with this content via Zapier, I'm going to say, create a reply for that tweet and suck it in. Or I tell you what, scrape all of these tweets from these really high-performing accounts and create tweets for me. And then Zapier just auto-posts them for me. And we're now connecting this effector basically with an output. We're now starting to pipe together this system. It's all hodgepodge. People are still figuring it out. Really important is the implementation here. I found a company, which I'm not going to give a shout out because I spoke to the founder and I don't agree with their approach, but there's some really important things that they're doing. They're creating auto replies for tweets. So it's a plugin, it's a Chrome plugin. You log into Twitter. If anyone doesn't use Twitter, it works like all the other social networks, more or less. You see someone's tweet, you go to click reply, and what will happen at the moment is their tool will auto-generate a reply for you. Really importantly, it doesn't post it. You have to click post, which means there's a human in the chain.
Yeah, and that is the key here, because generative AI isn't always perfect. It might not always have the facts. It might be accidentally plagiarizing something. It might make a mistake with the output in the case of our kind of lawyer example here, right? That could cost you the case or cost someone a lot of money.
Well, Siri, Alexa, how often do they get it wrong?
Yeah, humans can get this stuff wrong as well. So having that peer review at the moment, I think is just part of what you should be doing if you're using ChatGPT to kind of generate content, especially regulatory content. You can't assume that it's going to create like a perfect output.
Let's go back. The military, like I said, are way ahead on this. So I'm trying to find a decent reference so that we don't get absolutely spanked by everyone in the comments for what we're saying. I can't find a military handbook online on this. So my reference is a bit weak here, calling it now. It's a Forbes article from October 2021, so a while ago. And if the news have heard about it, it's been going on for a while. And they talk about the US Air Force confirming that artificial intelligence is now in play in something called the kill chain. A bit of a gory name because it's weapons and warfare and defense, but the way to think of the kill chain is a process chain. So imagine making a cup of tea as a process. You've got all these inputs. You've got the time that you're making the cup of tea, how many sugars they want if they're heathen and going to put sugar in their tea. What type of tea bag? Are you having it with milk or with a slice of lemon? Which mug do you want? You've got all these inputs. Currently, the way tea's made, a person does all that, takes all those inputs, makes a brew, and some people make a great cuppa. Other people don't. And you end up with this tea as an output. Very important thing is that quality check. You hand it to someone and they go, oh yeah, that's a good cup of tea. There's a person at the end. That's a process chain. In warfare, it's the same. All these inputs, like, oh, we've got a picture of someone over there that, is the same shape as someone we don't like and has some weapons that we think we don't like in an area that we think we don't like. And we've got authorization and it aligns with our mission intent, which is to protect this other area over here, which is our base. All these inputs happening. Now, practically in the military, that's a big problem. You've got a pilot who's worrying about flying their jet at a hell of a speed with all these weapons on, with fuel, and they're doing all their aviation, which way am I going, am I with my mates, and all this kind of stuff going on. And then we're going to overload them with all of this mission information, and we're expecting them to make a decision. So artificial intelligence has a place there. It's like, well, I'll make sense of all that information, and I'll give you like a level of certainty. Blow that up or don't blow that up. But at the end of the day, the pilot is the one that pulls the trigger. There's a whole load of checks and balances that go and play before that to make sure that before they let rip and let that weapon go, that it's all up to par. And there's a very strict protocol in the military because you can't just be dropping ordnance wherever you like. It has to be rationalized. And they've put artificial intelligence in that kill chain. And very importantly, there's a human in the loop. Very importantly. And that's what this chat bot thing is doing for this company. And I said, I got in touch and I was like, look, there's a play here for really big companies that are doing customer support, because customer support is a headache, massive headache. And as a customer, it's a pain when you're getting rubbish results. I've got a problem, please help me. and you don't hear anything, or there's a 15-minute wait, or you get sent to a premium number, or the answer you get back is, from someone with English as a second language, and it's not ideal, and you can't get your account information. And it's like, well, the standard, the output there is pretty low, and AI is above that. And so I say, well, why don't you just automate that? They're going, well, we don't think robots on the internet's a good idea. I'm like, well, okay, fair enough. You've got to have a human in the kill chain. But I'm saying there, well, no, you don't want a human. I don't need it. I do at a certain level. You've got to figure out that threshold. If it starts wanting to do financial transactions.
It's going to happen at some point.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Like, my AI is going to talk to your AI and organize a thing, right? I think you're going to have your human part of the kind of process chain taken over. But until then, I think as long as whatever you're going to use ChatGPT for in your business, so whether it's writing content, you don't just verbatim take that content and post it online, right? There is a human doing a little bit of fact checking first and slightly rewording things, right? If you're going to use it to write emails, you personalize it correctly. If you're going to use it to write, what were you saying earlier, write a Shakespearean sonnet.
Yeah, write you a sonnet, yeah.
There's just an element of yourself that's kind of gone in there and rewritten it slightly, or just sort of checked it and made sure that it's written how you would write. It's got words that you would use when you're writing.
I think the use case really depends, doesn't it? Because at the moment we're saying, well, we don't want AI to screw us and we don't want it to screw anyone else. But let's flip it on its head. Let's say we've got the Martin Lewis AI. So Martin Lewis, for our American friends, is this guy who is a vigilante for the people, and he goes out there and finds the best deals that are online. What if he created an AI and all it did is it worked on your behalf to go and negotiate all of your bills, all of your outgoings? So you say, yeah, I'll plug you into all of my accounts. Go negotiate with them and get me the best deal. And if they don't give me the best deal, swap. AI, go on this chat thing, renegotiate my phone subscription, renegotiate my Sky bill, renegotiate my office rent. I'm buying that AI. That's going to save me money. And I don't care. It's talking to the man. It's talking to this big business. It's got loads of... I don't want to be in the loop. Just tell me.
If we are optimizing our businesses, right? If we are optimizing our businesses, that is a no-brainer. Like whenever I have to do anything related to tax, it takes 2 days a month out of my business. It's a headache. I'm bad at it. People have to explain things like they have to a child, and it's so much easier potentially for me to kind of get what I need from generative AI, right? The thing is though, I'm on board here with like lawyers using AI for output, for kind of basic customer service, for output. Where do you keep the eggs? Oh, on aisle 5 kind of output, right? I've got a really interesting case study for you. I don't know if you've got it on your list, but there's a mental health app that decided, it's called Koko, Koko, that decided to use ChatGPT 3 to counsel up to 4,000 users. They did it on about 30,000 messages, basically. And the boss of Koko, a guy called Rob Morris, went and put the full case study on Twitter with a Loom video and everything. They basically said on Koko, people can ask for help or help others. What happens if ChatGPT helps as well? So they used a co-pilot approach with humans supervising the AI as needed, basically. And then they got messages composed by AI, supervised by humans. And apparently those messages of support to a user were rated higher than those written by humans on their own.
Of course.
If people knew that they were being responded to by generative AI, especially when it comes to therapy and getting help with kind of more delicate subjects, they'd feel cheated, right?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a generational thing and an adoption thing. So I think this is a new tool. It's kind of like the invention of fire. Well, fire can burn a house down, or it can keep you warm and cook your dinner. Like, there are good and bad use cases. And right now, where we are on the adoption curve is at the very early stage. We've got innovators looking at it. And I think we spoke about it before, this adoption curve by, what's his face? Is it Jeffrey Moore? Roger Moore, Crossing the Chasm is the book on it. And there's about 2.5% of the market are the innovators and disruptors. And then you have the next stage of the market, which is a bit more, about 10% of the market, early stage adopters. And then you have late stage early adopters, which makes up about 34% of the market. And technology is adopted in that way because of the risk profile of it when it first exists. You look at Tesla, they came up with the Tesla Roadster, the first ever car, and it had like less than 100-mile range, it overheated, had all these problems. But it was really successful because, it then led to one of the biggest car companies. They were the biggest, according to their cap table, car company in the world. So You've got to decide for yourself, where are you? And at the moment, I think AI has jumped up that adoption curve because there's asymmetric risk. And yeah, we're going to have problems, and they're going to be many. I think what we want to talk about probably for the rest of this episode is two things. Business opportunities, what cool businesses can now exist that couldn't exist before, and then how people can practically, tactically implement this in their business, like tangibly today. How can they save hours in their business, like in operations, either with a virtual assistant or themselves? What do you reckon? Because I've got the UK's whole AI strategy up in front of me here, and I could get all excited about, how the Ministry of Defence is going to use it and how the NHS are going to use it. But I think that's probably not very practically useful for people in their business day to day.
Just to bookend what we were saying, though, is that I don't want to dust like what Coco have done under the carpet quickly, right? Because
Sorry.
because like that's going to be something that people listening to this and watching this are going to be thinking about. Is it ethical to replace human contact in some instances with AI? Because of course you and I, from an optimization point of view, are going to be like, yeah, of course you would do that, because you'd save time, you'd save money, you wouldn't have to employ people, But what are the consequences of that optimization, like long term, essentially? Rob Morris was saying that like there was an initial backlash that he got to running this experiment. People felt not great about it, right? I know what you're going to say. Well, they don't have to know about it, right? But when you're talking about something as important as therapy or something that's more delicate, if you were trying to get the bra size of someone, or you were trying to find out, a real symptom that someone might have to talk about with their doctor, and you're going to use like generative AI to do that instead, like how do you get them to trust you, and trust is really important in a business. And if we are going to replace that stuff with supercomputers, how do we at the same time convince the end users of that this is going to be okay as well? Because we could roll this out and go, you know what, on paper, optimization wise, this looks brilliant, right? But it might crash and burn, and we can't fault people for thinking like that.
No, I agree with you. So here's what I think is going to happen. Speculation, pure speculation here. There'll be a few startups that just go fully AI, will just embrace it, and they'll have much lower operating costs. And then we'll have the laggard businesses, which currently have people in place, and their operating costs will be higher. And they'll try to do a bit of AI, but they'll have all these challenges you're talking about. And those companies with people and AI in the loop are going to have this challenge of, well, do we give people a two-tier service? Do we say, oh, this bit's by a person, this bit's by AI? The people that lose trust, that don't tell them, they're dead. The market will decide. As a consumer, you'll end up with these two options in front of you. Oh, there's this really cheap one over here, which looks pretty good and can move much quicker because their profit margins are bigger, because essentially it's software, and we all know SaaS companies dominate the world. And then there's this one over here that's, got all these people. Do I like IKEA furniture because I can have a lot of it, it's quite cheap? Or do I want this thing that's literally 20 times the price, handcrafted by the guy down the road out of oak? And the market will decide. I don't think our opinion matters. I know where I would put my money, because people are strapped for cash. We live in mostly a capitalist society.
Yeah, and they'll come to terms. They'll come to terms with getting a certain set of data from generative AI and be okay with it. I think what kind of comes out of this discussion, that it's really important for businesses to be transparent about what they're doing, I think, and letting their users know. This was written by AI with input from the team here, or we're going to chat to you in AI, but we're going to oversee the conversation and check in. And by doing so, we can bring the costs down, or we can deliver it to you quicker, or all the other pain points solved, and letting them know why you're using generative AI, and kind of opening up the fourth wall, if you like, of kind of what's going on inside your business and why you're doing what you're doing.
It's going to be a huge education piece, isn't there? I mean, if you say, hey, you can chat to one of our team, but you're going to have to wait a day or two because they're really busy, or you can chat to Al.
Dave.
Yeah, Dave, whatever we call it. This is our chatbot. He knows everything we do, everything that's going on in the company, can access all your accounts, but it's a computer. Like, well, but you can do it now, right now. And probably better. Like, again, the market's going to decide. But what you're saying about, transparency and things, I think that's the case currently for all business. If you don't have trust if you're not honest, and it's like with a person, isn't it? If you go, well, that person's dishonest, then you're dead in the water. We start to talk about moral being and societal culture, what it means to be a good person and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's still important. And now we've got AI over here, which is this new thing we just got to be honest about. I think you're exactly right. But yeah, that's my prediction. The people that are going to be the next unicorns are going to be brand new companies that go all in on AI, can do it faster, cheaper, quicker. They don't have to persuade the teams. They don't have to change their legacy documentation. They can front run all of this AI strategy that's coming out from the government, like Facebook did. Like Facebook far outpaced the governments, and now everyone's going, oh, Christ, Facebook's got all the data in the world. Amazon have got all this data. Oh, you could be that. You could front run it. And yeah, Zucks went to court. Bad stuff happened. But that's going to be the unicorn, because it's going to make loads of money. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying if capitalism is right. Like, I'm not, but that is the world we're in. That's probably what's going to happen. That's where my money is.
Just kind of like big summary really is that this is not going anywhere. The adoption is increasing day by day. Who knows what's going to happen by the time we get to ChatGPT 4, and the thinking capacity in there. Like, I saw a diagram, one of our previous episode crushes Alex Hormozy shared on his Instagram, and it was like a dot showed the thinking capacity of ChatGPT, and then there was like the equivalent of it filled the whole square of the Instagram post that was talking about the cognitive capacity of GPT-4. And if as business owners you get your value from doing the work for people, you might have to think about how can you get the value from being a better operator of these tools in the future. And no one's going to give you a prize for writing 10 blog posts this year on your own. Why not get 10 blog posts written in a week and get those like posted up, on your website? And if you do have the opportunity to be able to use generative AI for kind of chat support or, just general information output for customer services point of view, how much is that going to save you? What do you need to do to step in and ensure that that information is true and correct and right for your customers and kind of the end user as well?
Like building a website. When people used to have a shop front, they go, oh, I've got to put this website out. I need to make sure all the website information is correct. It's just another tool. It's just another digital tool. You got to learn to use it. You got to learn to embrace it.
My kids will turn around one day and be like, what did you do before ChatGPT? Like, in the same way they're like, when I tell them that we used to go to phone boxes, they just look at me like, what?
My son does this. I say, oh, we need to get such and such. His first question is, well, when will it be here? Because he doesn't even think that he might leave the house. And I go, well, we'll go to the shops. No, Dad, I just get the man to bring it.
Yeah, the man.
And then he's there going, and he starts shouting at Alexa, because I've got all these automations set up, and he starts trying to order from Alexa, like there and then. He doesn't know any other world. And I've gone fully, I'm going to give him all the tech, because my bet is this is where it's going, and I'll teach him to do all of it. And he's only 4. Like, I do think this could be a home advantage. One other thing I want to say, I've set up a couple of small WhatsApp business groups. I'm in one, actually, I didn't set up. We talk more openly, more candidly, because we're all a bit kinder than you would in public. And for people that don't know listening, I run an agency, a business that makes product for military defence. And can't talk about that, can't talk about the work we do. But the guys asked me, well, how far are we away from Terminator? Reasonable question. My bet is there aren't many people, you see robots and things that are out there. So this is where it gets interesting, is when you start putting this into effectors, into motors. We have very strict regulation and control over what can and can't be built. There's very strict guidelines. There's a whole vetting process. If it's happening on an MOD program, it's been done in a lab in a controlled environment very, very carefully. That's just the way it's so heavily regulated and so much harder to innovate than you would think. I think where we're going to see the real innovation is we've got distribution now. It's going to be smart individuals, small teams that have got financial backing in that they've got some little side project on the internet and they're hacking away. That's where we're going to see like some really special stuff. You saw Oculus that Facebook bought. This was some teenager, 19 years old, who just loved the idea of VR, did it all through university, and then gets bought for billions of pounds, and now he owns Anduril, the defence company.
Palmer Luckey.
Awesome. Wish they were here in the UK, but they're not. And for me, that's what I'd be looking for if you were going to invest. I'd be looking for those teenagers, those early 20-year-olds that are hacking away, building stuff, it's a 5-10 year play, and the tools now are so advanced, and you can do it in no code. It's unreal. And if you're not a techie person, I'd be looking at marketing. I'd be looking at advertising that goes behind it. I'd be looking at design, use cases. How do people use it? I'd be doing all the other skills, but specifically for AI. If that's where you're at, if you've already got a business, well, we can talk about how to implement it. How would you implement it?
For the past year, I've been using AI to write Facebook ad copy, Instagram ad copy, TikTok ad copy, and then we go through and just do a final sense check before it goes live. Been writing blog content, website content for a good year using Jasper and now ChatGPT. And very recently, I've been using the tool to do weekly client reports as well, because they're pretty similar. It's just a matter of like inputting and outputting different stats. And if I handwrote those, it would take me all morning. It takes me half an hour now. To do that, and also coming up with bullet point ideas for tweets. I mean, it's just expediting my thinking, because I think as an operator of the tool, I can go in and say, I'd like to write this about this. Can you flesh it out for me? And I'm not a quick typer. I never have been, and it just can output those couple of paragraphs that then I need to put into the blog post or put into the thing I'm sending or whatever. I think because Facebook have just recently reported that they're back on track to make up the profits that they lost from Apple stealing all of their ad revenue from the so-called stealing from the iOS 13, 14 update, whatever it was. They've been able to do that with, AI within their platform, basically, and a lot more than we have been doing in the past. We've been using their kind of AI ads manager campaigns, their advantage campaigns. Yeah.
They're the companies that are going to smash it, because people are using AI every day and they don't know, but it's not being used for human interaction. And that's what's crazy to me is, the dynamic pricing at the supermarket. Well, that's not a person, that's a human. That's what makes your shopping affordable. The dynamic pricing, the dynamic availability of antibiotics. Well, that's not a human, that's machine learning. It's not AI, let's be clear. And we don't want to, on this podcast, get into the semantics of what all the different types of artificial intelligence are, but and Facebook, all of everything you do on your phone, most of it's got some machine learning in the background, some sort of intelligence.
Mostly. I mean, what I'd like at some point is for AI to be able to provide, not necessarily, because I get the reporting within the various ad manager platforms that we work in, but what I would like is a easy to understand output report that we can send clients. That's our expertise, right? Is we could go in and, as operators of the platforms, look at that data and then translate that data. But I think there's varying degrees that people are very good at talking about data. I think it's an art form, talking about it to clients without sending them to sleep. And so being able to use generative AI to create a report that's tailored to an individual's way of learning would be great, because I've shown reports to people before where I've really pared it down and made it easy to understand. And you know what? The client's just zoned in on like one thing, or they've started snoring halfway through, or whatever. And like, it would just be great to get like a TikTok sized video output of what's going on with your ads this week and what's the one key thing we're going to do. And that takes time to put together. And I think that's the kind of key thing for me for how to move along in the business and scale it this year, is the time that can be saved. It's like literally having an assistant. So
I think opportunities wise, there is a lot of opportunity connecting your data sources to AI. So what I mean by that is connecting email to AI, connecting customer service requests to AI, connecting social media to AI, connecting reports you currently get. And then, so that's on the input side, that data in, and then the queries that you ask it. So for instance, if you were creating content, like I said before, here are all the top accounts that currently exist, and here filter on their top tweets. Okay, take all that as input. Here are all the tweets that I've ever put out. So this is what I sound like. Take their content, make it sound like me, input it here into a list, so then I can select which ones go out. And then on the output side, there's going to be these interfaces. So for instance, I have a friend who set up Pimp My Spaces, he's calling it, and he's designing YouTube setups and home offices that look sexy. He's got to do mine yet. And I'm saying, do you know there's architectural tools out there that are powered by OpenAI and they literally design the space? So I think there's going to be that output for the record as well. We want to watch Neuralink for that because currently the big constraint between the HMI, the human machine interface, is we use a keyboard and mouse for the most part, and then we use our ears and our eyes to input. That's the pinch point. We're limited on how much we can see, how much we can hear, and how much we can output.
That's all our flesh bags can do.
Yeah, Neuralink, which is already going through trials and yielding some good results. Musk is going to smash it again. I also want to talk, I've got a friend who's very senior in the financial sector, and he's in another group that I'm in, and he said, genuinely halve my brain utilization this week. I've no idea what I'm going to do with all this free time. And he's been writing about, very dry, manufacturing economic risk in the UK. And he's got this output which he sent me. I'll pick one. There are several economic risk factors to the manufacturing sector in the UK, including, and one of them is the slowdown in global economic growth, which could lead to lower demand for UK manufactured goods. Now, I don't know whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, but he's saying, I don't have to do as much thinking now. This is his job, and he's very well paid for doing it. Crazy.
In my community, small business owners, I've been ragging them for years. Write more blog content. Google loves it, right? Now I'm like, use ChatGPT to write your blog content, edit it, because obviously Google they've just brought out a recent update, so it can detect generative AI, or so it says. I think there's a gentleman's agreement that's going on behind the scenes between ChatGPT and Google or something, because now apparently I think future outputs from ChatGPT might have some type of watermarking embedded in it.
Yeah, with spacing and that type of thing.
Yeah. So, I'm saying that to my business owners, and they could just get on and do their thing now, whatever it is. I work with therapists, jewelry makers, dog treat suppliers, they can go and have a nice life and do the things that they're meant to do without having to worry about, what's Google done to analytics now? I've got to write new blog content. I've got to do this. This stuff will just get looked after for them anyway. And this is just the start of it.
Yeah, a bit of a process behind that then. So people are using it for customer service emails. Someone sends you an email, you tell ChatGPT, here's the email, respond with your inputs, and then you can review the content. If it's a blog content, similar, I want to write me a blog post about this tone of voice with this output. You take the output, and then if you're worried about what Google thinks, as you should be, bang it through Grammarly, which will identify any of this watermarking I have. Disclaimer, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It'll identify spaces.
It won't. It'll identify whether the copy's been directly lifted from other areas of the internet. So it's got a plagiarism lookout, but it doesn't know fully.
If this print, there's only so many things it could be. It's the use of language, it's the use of letters, it's the space in between stuff.
It's the arrangement of those letters next to each other, essentially, right?
Yeah, so if it isn't good, proper English, then you can start to tackle some of that. And it's going to have to be that, otherwise the answer will be garbage. So take that, read through it, but you are going to cut down on all that ideation time, all the writing time, and that's where it's going to come from.
So is that cheating? No, it's not cheating. It's like having an employee working for you, doing all of the arrangement of those letters next to each other. And, and I think that the kind of summary of what we've been talking about is you shouldn't just do it, let it happen and walk away. At the moment, you should cast an eye over the content that's being created and be mindful of the output and the responses.
Put yourself in the kill chain.
Yeah, put yourself in the kill chain, in the process. If it's helping improve the amount of time that you have, if it's saving you money, and it's free, this tool is free at the moment, which blows my mind. That might not be for long, though, because I hear Microsoft want to do a $10 billion investment on the tool that's kind of come out this week. But why it's free, make hay while the sun shines, really, and get over that feeling of cheating.
Yeah, and if anyone's worried, hang on, this free thing might go away, There are paid alternatives that utilize the same models. One we're a big fan of is Jasper.
Jasper, love Jasper. Should we put an affiliate link below in the show notes here?
Jasper is originally called Jarvis after Jarvis. Well, no, they didn't explicitly say this, but as in Jarvis in Iron Man. But then they got told by the Marvel Disney franchise, you're not allowed to call it that. So now it's called Jasper. Jasper.ai / check in the comments below for an affiliate link. Paid tool, paid one available. And there are others, but that one's the market leader. That one's the one you will look at.
I think we were about to run out of time, but I really wanted to hear about, like, what's your top 3 takeaways from what the government are doing with AI, Sam?
Top 3 takeaways. It's inevitable. It's happening. I've never seen so much action in a government strategy as I've seen in this one.
Have you read a few?
I have, yeah. I mean, that's where a lot of our funding comes from. My advice, if you're looking to get into this, go find yourself a project you can start learning this stuff on. It's coming. And just being a little bit ahead will put you in the top 10%. And being in the top 10% on stuff that people don't really understand, you're never going to be out of work or out of business. What I hope happens, a slightly political statement, is that the NHS gets all the support, because the NHS is getting battered. And those people literally save lives every day and don't get the support and funding they deserve. If we can reduce the costs, if we can reduce the overhead of one of the things that makes Britain great, I think that would be good for everyone. Really good. So I really, really hope that that's where it goes. Unfortunately, we are at war, inadvertently a covert war. And disclaimer, my opinion, nobody else's. A lot of funding is going to go there. But anyway, yeah, that's my takeaway.
Exciting. Okay.
Go watch the Ryan Reynolds video. Can we snip that up?
Or I'll put the link in the show notes, because he's talking about replacing the marketing team for Mint Mobile with ChatGPT. Just by the way, I did go and do the exact same query afterwards, and ChatGPT didn't write in the voice of Ryan Reynolds. So I think they had a little bit of artistic license there. But
yeah, maybe. Well, you wonder, don't you? Because I've mimicked people's voices, and I just take the top things that they've ever said. You put that in first, and then apply the query. So if they put in, here's an example, here's an example, here's an example, here's an example, and it got the pattern recognition, then you might have got a different. You don't know what the query was, do you? I mean, he might have.
No, I don't. He might have said, right, exactly this. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if they're gonna write their ad campaigns with generative AI this year, then so should everyone else.
If it's good enough for them.
All right. Yeah, that was really fun talking about that. And I feel like we've tackled some big things there. So dear listener, if you enjoyed that chat, guess what? We're going to be talking about AI a lot this year. And in order to stay up to date on our chat, you're going to need to subscribe. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the bell. And if you're listening to this on a podcast player, then do actual subscribe and maybe go and leave us a review. That would make us very happy.
Tell us what we can improve on, because that's how we learn. That's how we get better.
Yeah, definitely.
Be kind. And yeah, Vicky, they can find you on social media at...
Yeah, I'm everywhere. Hey, Vicky with an I, Jakes. So hey, Vicky Jakes on Twitter and everywhere else. And you are, Sam?
I am at Jax_Sam, or if you search Sam Jax, that's SAMJAXX. Twitter is the place to find me. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about how you can implement this stuff. Not just, it's cool to do this mental masturbation thing of it could be amazing. But actually implementing it tactically, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah. There's going to be some great case studies coming out this year. 100%. All right, cool. See you next week.